Welcome back. Today we are starting a new multi-part series.
That's right.
Here on Flashback Friday. Back in 1999, our former colleague Jacquelyn Getty traveled from the Quad Cities to Russia.
And they were following a Quad City family as they were trying to adopt a child.
Yeah, so here is the first story of a couple they did on Flashback Friday. Only here on The Current on News 8.
A capsulated world of stoic grace, where great writers were inspired and legends still sleep. On the snowy cold cobblestone streets of Russia, people bustle past each other, but with little purpose. Smiles seldom come since last August. That's when the ruble began its sickening downward spiral. Factories have closed, salaries diminished to practically nothing, and the already crowded orphanages burst with children.
Say hi. Say hi. This is Katia. Kate.
Like many of the little ones here at Fresnia House of Babies on the outskirts of Moscow, Katya was abandoned by her parents.
We have 105 babies, and some of these babies were just thrown away, sometimes even to the garbage dumps, and sometimes just put somewhere.
And with no clue as to who or where their parents are, these children are unadoptable, forgotten without a future. There are 24 other baby houses just like this one in Moscow itself. Nurses and doctors here are doing what they can. It is one of the better institutions, we're told. But it's grossly understaffed and workers are underpaid. The average monthly salary here is 500 rubles. That's about $25.
Basically, we have to have at least one worker, not a nurse, but a professional teacher who would deal with invalids. One teacher for 5.
Right now they have 1 for 10 children, and that means many days babies are left in their cribs. But today Katya has warm arms around her. Nancy Edlund, a grandmother of 3 from Moline, is here.
I heard so much about the needs of the children here and the little babies, and I'm going to cry. I wanted to come and do what I could.
So Nancy and about 20 others joined ChildLife International for the experience of a lifetime, traveling nearly 5,000 miles to bring aid, hope, and love to those like Katya, alone in Russia. All volunteers are from different backgrounds, and no one really knows what to expect or what to offer, besides the suitcases packed with medicine and toys. But Nancy and the others soon find out that human contact is what these children need most: stimulation, attention.
They need to be held, they need to be loved, and they respond to that. They snuggle into you, and it was a beautiful, wonderful, heart-rending experience.
6 hours away in Oryol, a town about the size of the Quad Cities, more volunteers from the ChildLife team meet the older kids at the transitional children's homes.
Hello?
Hello. Here, kids may stay for up to 3 months before returning home or moving on to a permanent orphanage.
Oh, underwear? Oh.
More aid comes in suitcases, packed and repacked the night before with what this site needs.
Medicine over there.
Eric Misfeld is on the Oryol team. He's a lab tech at Genesis Hospital back home. Here, he'll do whatever he can to help.
They walk up and grab your hand and look up at you and just smile. And again, there's really, what can you say? There's really no words to describe that. It's pure emotion.
Nastya is 3. She's a bundle of energy and smiles. She spends the morning entertaining us, dancing and singing into the camera's microphone.
There's only one line from the song, and she's singing that line. I love you, it's truly.
Nastya's been here for a month. Her mother is dead, her father in prison, and her future does not look good. The father has parental rights for now, making Nastya unadoptable, but without parents. She will likely go to a permanent children's home or internat, an institution linked to some horrifying statistics. 20% of kids placed in an internat end up with criminal records. 30% wind up drug addicts or alcoholics. 10% commit suicide. What will happen to Nastya? No one can tell us. Having Eric in the ChildLife group here means songs and games.
In America, right? We live right there in America.
And individual attention, the loneliness tucked away behind smiling eyes, at least for some.
One of them said, "I want you to be my father." And I was just like, oh. What do you say to that? We go to bed every night, and I mean, you just feel like there's nothing more to give, that you've given everything, and then you wake up the next morning and it's, you see the faces and you're like, you have to give more.
As we travel back and forth between the temporary children's homes, the bus lumbers past the massive housing complexes where many of those abandoned children came from. We question a social welfare director why the Russian people aren't taking in these children. Our interpreters answer.
Relatives are going through financial crisis, and neighbors too. They don't care. They got to take care of themselves.
Eugene, who is Russian and a ChildLife member, speaks up too.
Not because they have bad people or hard-hearted people. They just emotionally worn out.
So that's where the Quad City volunteers have filled a need, at least for a few days, giving the children a little hope and maybe a teddy bear to hang on to, and building trust with workers for future groups to follow.
Everybody held out their arms and held them and loved them. And these children just, were so hungry for that, and they needed that so much. And they got it today.
It's been a week spent hugging children who may have no future, laughing when the volunteers would rather scream for the inhumanity of the situation. Right now, these children need the smiles. They live the rest. But the sad goodbyes ahead are reality. The whole team knows that, and the days go by fast.
They're probably going to cry, and I'm sure I will too. Just thinking about it, I'm dreading tomorrow when we leave.
We take them home in our hearts. We leave them here physically. And we pray that God watches over them.
Bright-eyed Marina is 6 years old. Right now she lives at a temporary orphanage in her hometown of Oryol, Russia. Her mother simply can't afford to keep her. The fall of Soviet Russia has meant devastating times for people. Many are moving their families around, looking for work.
Sometimes it's hard for them to find that new place and find that new job, and they have to leave the child behind and settle down before they can take him back.
Marina is one child among hundreds of thousands in Russia classified as without parental care, now living her childhood surrounded by strangers, her future in limbo.
Over 70% of all the children who are placed here eventually go back to the families.
But that means 30% don't, abandoned because of poverty, birth defects, or alcoholism in their family. The kids will leave this temporary shelter or safe haven to become wards of the state. There they receive 8 years of mandatory schooling. But with no real education or job skills, they'll likely wind up on the streets, prostitutes and drug addicts, or in prison, even just for stealing food.
And when you talk to them about what's going to happen to the kids, the children are told they have to be stoic about it. They know that their parents are alcoholics and that they're their mom and dad, and that's it. Other people just don't get them.
This is why Karen Paytash flew 5,000 miles to Russia with ChildLife International, a Davenport-based charity group. She's from East Moline, a sweet lady with a gift for storytelling. Karen and fellow volunteer Terry Gleese of Davenport are assigned to help out at a site about 6 hours outside of Moscow. At first glance, even into a temporary orphanage, visitors are given a show. Songs and dances for the guests, with the girls dressed up in bows. But the poverty and even neglect are very real, and it doesn't take long to find the need. In just days, Karen and Terry realize the impact that they're having on these kids.
Today, if they couldn't stand beside me, they cried. You know, like you only have 2 hands, and this is the time I wish I had 8. These kids are just thrilled with the simplest things. Just holding your hand, touching your face, being able to sit beside you. It just warms your heart.
Seeing the conditions the children live in is difficult for Karen and for Terry, especially considering that this is one of the best places the kids could hope to be.
They were dressed really bad. Their shoes had big holes in them. Their clothes didn't match. They were pretty worn out. Some of them smelled like urine.
Bringing in some treats, warm clothes, and stuffed animals for the children to hold at night will obviously not solve all of the problems here. But as Karen and Terry are learning, it's one step at a time, one smile for one child, holding outstretched fingers tightly with the 2 hands that you have to offer, and hoping others will open theirs too. In Zamenka, Russia, Jacquelyn Getty, News Channel 8. Long hours spent at her sewing machine in East Moline seem a long time ago for Joyce Haskins. She's in Russia now, and one of her homemade baby quilts is keeping a sleeping child warm tonight.
I have 10 grandchildren and 1 on the way, and this was an abandoned baby. And I just can't really tell you how I felt. It was overwhelming.
Joyce is spending a week volunteering along with a group from Davenport at Russian orphanages and baby houses like this one on the edge of Moscow. Over 100 children call this building home.
Even some that I didn't pick up, I just rubbed their heads, and I think just the human contact makes so much of a difference.
Newborns to kids 6 years old live here, 70% waiting to go back to financially struggling or troubled homes. The other 30% adoptable.
Abandoned kid. He's abandoned.
When we ask if this site is open to international adoption, the head nurse is quick to answer.
I'm totally for that.
Not all areas are, as we found out this week, so the kids here where Joyce is volunteering today have a fighting chance. Last year, 28 kids were adopted from this baby house, 21 of them abroad.
And we keep close in touch with the parents who adopted babies from our institution.
Joyce and the other volunteers are not thinking about adoption today. They're here to fill a temporary need for the little ones. But that doesn't make it any easier to walk away from the children when it's time to go.
It was hard to pick one up and then put it down again. It was hard to do. It was hard to walk out of a room and leave them.
Harder still knowing that there are thousands of babies Joyce didn't get to hold. So many others waiting patiently for something that they've never had, never even dreamed of, and something they may never know. In Fresnia, Russia, Jacquelyn Getty, News Channel 8.
And he's a little bit over 1 year old, and he is staying here since the age of 2 months. He has his arms crippled.
Baby Igor lives among dozens of others at an orphanage in Russia, cast away because he was not born perfect.
Some of these babies were just thrown away, sometimes even to the garbage dumps, and sometimes just put somewhere.
During our trip to Russia with a local volunteer group, we found that children born with birth defects, no matter how correctable the flaws, are often abandoned, a social stigma to their parents. Many of us heard before going on this trip that Russian culture coddles the best and brightest children and hides away the others, but seeing that it was true over and over was an emotional struggle for many.
I know one part of me saying, this is horrible. How can they do this? This is just, these poor children, they can't help it.
Brent is 19, a patient, caring person with a special connection for many of the children.
Well, at home, my brother, he's retarded. He has a lot of disabilities himself. He's adopted, and so am I.
Brent spent his time in the orphanages reaching out to children who even the kindest workers that we'd met had given up on. One boy in particular stands out to Brent.
A little kid, he was just rocking. He was kind of staying away from everybody.
We'd noticed several children throughout the week who seemed to rock to console themselves, like this boy, Igor. We asked the head doctor why he rocked. Her professional opinion surprised and saddened us.
His brain is damaged, and his IQ is very close to even 0. He is like locked within himself, and if you'll try to stop him, it will be disturbing him. For some reason, he just needs to rock.
A disturbing diagnosis that will dictate this child's future. He's been classified as an invalid, and from here he will go to a house for invalids, where he will live out his days in a bed. What Igor's actual IQ was, we never discovered, and no one else, it seemed, would ever try to find out. In truth, Igor seemed happy as staring at a plate on the wall, watching and moving as the light reflected and danced off of it. This was likely his stimulation before Brent and the volunteers came, and no doubt will be again once they leave. Near Moscow, Jacquelyn Getty, News Channel 8.
She wants you to see how she moves.
12-year-old Anya lives in Frozino, Russia, a suburb of Moscow. Born crippled, Anya was thrown away by her parents.
Divorced because of the child. They were quarreling all the time because of her. They tried to find out whose fault was it that she was in such a condition.
But Anya's grandmother Nina rescued her from the baby house she was left at and has spent the past 12 years raising Anya and teaching her at home.
She sits in her armchair, in this armchair, and types. These are her exercise books. This is mathematics. Teacher comes and marks her works. She's an excellent pupil.
A proud grandma, Nina has relied on a small pension to care for herself and Anya. And since the fall of the ruble, that money is much less. Still, she will not give up her granddaughter. Some miles off at a baby house, we see many more children not as lucky as Anya, left on the doorstep of this orphanage, or worse. Little Sergei was thrown under a passing train, but he survived. And because of the head doctor here's attitude towards the kids and their future, Sergei and many others will continue to survive.
Sometimes, like a miracle happens in the life of our orphanage. Like we had 3 cases when incurable invalids, or actually the kids who were considered to be incurable invalids, were adopted by American citizens.
She tells us that now all 3 children live happy, healthy lives with their very loving parents. These are adoptions that she helped make possible. Many hours off in a town called Oryol, international adoption is not yet accepted.
Here we go.
They're just beginning to welcome outside groups like ChildLife International, a Davenport-based charity who traveled there recently to bring in aid and smiles to the children.
We're touched by the sincere interest and this unbiased approach that people coming here show to our children. And they feel that, and it's all sincere and natural.
And this room is one example of how Oryol is starting to look harder on their own into the needs of the children. Here, soothing music, calming light wands, and a caring psychologist all work together to relax the kids and to help them work out aggression.
In America. Right? We live right there in America.
It is in opening up areas formerly opposed to Western help, finding out more about what children need emotionally, and breaking down barriers of social stigma that offer hope for the children abandoned in Russia. Near Moscow, Jacquelyn Getty, News Channel 8.
What we have here is toys, stuffed animals.
4 weeks of last summer spent as host parents for 2 Russian orphans have brought Carolyn and Rob Richardson here, from Matherville, Illinois to Shelkova, Russia. Though they haven't told the boys, they came here considering adoption.
He saw us and he ran and jumped, and I caught him, and he was very ecstatic.
That's Eugene, the 13-year-old who stole their hearts, and this is a wonderful reunion with their Russian sons, but a definite surprise that even the younger boy, Bori, does not seem miserable here in his current situation.
You know, I guess I had envisioned him, you know, just like clinging to us and, you know, just wanting our attention the whole time, and he wasn't like that at all. And I think maybe that was harder for me to see how, you know, I guess, it humbles you to see, well, maybe we're not needed that much.
And the orphanage Bori and Eugene live at for now is well provided for. The couple decides they have to make a choice.
We were focused on 2 children that we had from Russia, and coming over here and seeing them, but in doing so, that has opened up doors to see other orphanages, other hospitals, other children that are in situations in dire need.
A day spent with the little ones in the baby house reaffirms that thought.
This is what ChildLife is all about right here. They just wanted to reach out to you, just to touch you. And they'd almost be reaching, you walk up to a crib and a child would hear you talking, and he's reaching up for you before he even sees you. And all these children were like isolated areas. It was like isolated worlds. Each child was doing their own way to survive each day. In that one room, there was many different worlds instead of just a room of children.
Eyes open to the daunting need here, the couple feels they have much work left to do.
And I hope I have the strength and the willpower to see a change in my heart, to put it in action where the rubber meets the road. What are you going to do about it? So we hope that maybe that it builds, that we lay footsteps for other people behind us who would question, that we can answer a question, and that would bring other people to the experience that we have had.
But Bori and Eugene are never far from Rob and Carolyn's hearts. They're proud of their boys and sad that they have to leave them for now.
They were what got us here, but we found out that wasn't the only reason we came.
That wasn't the reason.
We didn't know that at the time, of course. Give me a hug. Masha, Masha.
It has definitely opened doors in my heart, but I can't see past the door frame right now. From host families to
Bye-bye.
4 weeks with
Bye.
2 Russian children, to Russia itself and what's next. It's going to be a continued story, and we don't know where it's going to go.
In Shelkova, Russia, Jacquelyn Getty, News Channel 8. Anytime that you need a police escort to get to your story, you know you're in for an adventure. But our struggles to report in Russia began even before that, at the airport with customs.
I really didn't think the cameras would get through. I thought we might have to turn around and get back on the plane and go back.
One problem replaced another. As guests of the TV station in Oryol, we were to tour area museums and spend the week sightseeing. But we knew our role on the trip was to follow local volunteers, a change in the program that left our hosts offended.
They're very gracious people. I think that it's like we're an entourage of some important people coming into their country, and they're going to put their best foot forward.
And that continued for a while. The orphanages that we were allowed into were some of the best funded, and they knew we were coming. The children welcomed us with party dresses, songs, and at one, a live youth band.
It was the dog and pony show, and we got it. Yeah.
When you guys came, everybody was just kind of scampering around, and I don't know what they were saying, but they were excited. They went in and changed all the kids' clothes, or most of them. Took the shoes off that were really bad.
Abandoned kid. He's abandoned.
But at some children's shelters, their wariness of us faded quickly, and they shared the sad stories of how many children had come to be there. Abandonment, family alcoholism, and economic crisis. Our stories were becoming very real, and that hit us all hard.
As a photojournalist, you look at faces and you look for reactions in faces. And in the Russian people, I see such almost a depression, a mood of hopelessness that I don't think I know I've never seen anyplace else.
This is my new friend Nadia. We gave her some new mittens that people from the Quad Cities donated, and gave her a teddy bear that she's going to be able to take home with her because she doesn't have any toys.
Marina.
This little girl yesterday, as soon as I walked in, she came over and grabbed my hand and drugged me to walk with her, and she was telling everybody, he's mine, he's mine.
For me, it was Nastya, a 3-year-old who called me Mama. Her real mother is dead, and her father is in prison. Right now, she's so alive, and she's so excited about everything around her. I just kept thinking, how long will that last? And for all of us, we've done the research, and we knew that many of these children would just never make it. Their sweet little faces who sleep in numbered beds for now will eventually become numbers themselves. Faceless statistics. In Oryol, Russia, Jacquelyn Getty, News Channel 8. If the words ChildLife International can be summed up in a picture, then you're looking at it.
Our family didn't have future, and before meeting with Connie, they had lived just saying goodbye to their daughter.
A heart defect would have cost Susha her life, but thanks to Connie Siefkin of Davenport and the charity she founded, Susha was given more time.
It is very difficult for her to speak on this topic, but she said that Connie is an angel for Ksusha and she helps her in everything.
Arguably, Connie is an angel for many children of Russia. Starting years ago as a missionary, Connie says she knew that the Russian people needed more.
They are not going to listen to us and believe us if we say, Jesus loves you, and leave them there starving or leave them there dying.
Thus, ChildLife International was born. That was 5 years ago, and oh, what this woman has done in that time. Sick children continue to have life-saving surgeries here. Host families welcome Russian children into their homes for months in the summer. And Connie's biggest achievement thus far, putting together ChildLife's first volunteer trips.
I was very frightened. I was thinking of all these things that could happen, that might happen, that eventually probably will happen, and how was I going to deal with it?
All went well. The 22 people on that volunteer team made the trip a huge success, bringing in 2,000 pounds of medicine, toys, and clothes, not to mention love, hugs, and smiles. But as Connie's dream of saving these children grows, so does the need there.
People have the attitude that ChildLife is bigger than it is, and so it's hard and difficult for me to listen to the needs and know the needs are there and have to say, I want to help, but at this time we have to wait because we're not capable of doing it.
Getting the word out about the charity is what Connie needs now, hands-on help, and lots of it.
I'm at a point now where we need to staff an entire office of volunteers that can take every department from me. The shipping of humanitarian aid, somebody that can oversee that. The helping with the sick children, somebody can oversee that. The foster care children from Russia, somebody that can oversee that. And if I can find the funding and let somebody else take over, then thousands of children can be helped.
So that's where we leave the story of ChildLife International, and it's where you at home determine its future and the future of children like Susha. Jacquelyn Getty, News Channel 8.